We're talking with Lieutenant Colonel Angela Mudd, extraordinaire. And she's been on with us before because we've talked about workplace violence. And we're bringing her on again because she was actually she was the first wave of medical teams that was sent out to New York City to help them when they were having the COVID crisis when it first swelled up there. So, Ange, we're bringing you back. How are you?
Colonel Mudd.
Colonel Mudd.
Yeah, just to clarify, I was the first wave in the Air Force.
In the Air Force, yes. That's right.
There was already some Navy there, but yeah, the first group of the Air Force medical personnel.
So we're going to back it up because we were starting to talk about like how she came in and stuff. So just so you know her history, her and I actually met when I had, I got out of the military, and then I went back in and joined the reserves, which was like a whole foreign thing to me. And so I meet her, who's big-eyed, and she's like, I'm joining the military, and this is what I've wanted to do, bucket list item kind of thing. And she was doing it at age, how old were you at the time? 42? 39? Oh, okay, I was close. You were 39 when she decided, this is what I'm going to do. She already been a director of nursing for years and then said, hey, let's do this kind of fun. And so she did it. Well, for the civilian population that don't really understand what the constructive credit means is that when you come in and you've been a nurse or certain career fields for so many years, they will give you credit towards rank. So they gave her 9 years credit, which made her equal to a senior captain. And why that was bad was because it put her, just imagine a great big line and you're heading up for rank. And she basically cut the line and went up to the front. And a year later, she was in the promotion, up for promotion with 1 year of experience behind her.
So the same set of expectations for somebody that's
like
barely
8 to 10 years.
Yeah. Trying to figure out, how do I even put this thing on and salute the right way? And
and so now she's at this point where she's like, hey, I am going up for major, and me and the chief nurse looked at each other and I said, this is bad. And she's like, why? And I said, well, let me explain to you what you need under your belt in order to promote. And at that time they were promoting and I'm not promoting, they were riffing people. So if you had a chance in the zone and the above the zone, and a lot of the above the zone was not promoting. And so they're like not riffing them, but they're saying, see you later, getting out. So anyways, it's a little off track of what we're talking about today, but the whole point is that I wanted to make the picture is that she did that checklist against a lot of people's thoughts that she wouldn't be able to do it. And she did it, and she promoted a year later to major. And now you're taking somebody that has, again, no military background, very little, 1 year, and people are looking at her with these gold leaves on her shoulder thinking she has been around for 10 years or so, right? So the challenges were steep, right? I mean, enormous, steep challenges. So I set the picture up that Ange is used to climbing up some pretty steep hills
a lot
successfully.
Of experience as a nurse, but not a whole lot at that point as
in the military,
commissioned officer.
Right.
None as a commissioned officer, and to have people, go into somebody, and I understand now. But going to people and going, hey, I have a question about XYZ, and I literally had somebody that I liked, I respected, go, so here's the problem. You're now a major, and I'm a captain. I have more experience, and you promoted, so don't ask me for anything.
Yeah,
I'll be your friend, and I like you. I was shocked, but at least she set the ground rules. Here's where I stand.
So petty. So petty.
I did it on my own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you had to figure that out, right? So that wasn't me. Oh no, I was a major then. So scroll ahead, right? And Ange's, getting it done. I am out now in the military, like years later, I retired out. And actually I was retiring, right? That was right at the time COVID hits.
That's right.
So I'm in the middle of retirement, and I'm calling my weenies at headquarters that I have some inside going, are they going to stop loss anybody? Because I'm a little worried right
Kind
now.
of shit in my britches right now. You're not going to pull any stunts, right?
And they told me, they're like, hey, there's a course of action on the table to stop loss medical, but it's like the 6th or 7th COA, like it's down the line. But you know, when they are doing all the strategic planning, they have to put all these course of actions up. So she goes, it's there, but it's really not a priority. I'm like, okay, well, don't make it a priority for like 6 more months so I can just get out. So in the midst of all that, then because I'm hearing it, you know, like, and they told me, they're like, yeah, they're going to be ramping up. They're going to be sending them out. And then I knew without a doubt, I'm like, Anne's going to be the first one out there. I just knew it. Right. And so sure enough, somehow we start talking. You probably called me or I called you or whatever. And she's like, yeah, I'm going. And I'm like, not shocked. So
the manifestation queen.
Yeah, she probably went and called the boss and said, hey, I'm here. Come
Put me
get
in, coach.
Right?
So
probably not how you wanted to see the Big Apple, though.
Oh my God! You know what? I can check that piece of shit off the list.
But you saw it empty. That's kind of the cool thing.
I saw it empty. I did, and I saw the worst of the worst. But I was so disappointed. It was neat to walk down Manhattan in the middle of the street with no traffic. I was surprised at how small Times Square was, and just the shitty people that were there.
Well, so let's kind of talk about what happened. So you know, I don't want to take your story because it's your story. So when you got the call, like, how was this all going down? So kind of take us through what was happening.
So, you know, we knew that people were going to be mobilized. You know, we'd already seen the emails, who's available, who's not available. And of course, I'm like first on the list. And because, you know, I worked so closely with people at Africa, I'm like, you better put me in there.
Put me in, coach.
I wasn't surprised. You know, I was planning for work, and all of a sudden they called me. I think it was in March. March, something like that. It was
probably the end of it.
Right after the NPOC that they had just had.
Yeah.
They, you know, pulled us all in, and the toilet paper fiasco. You know, they called and said, we need you in New Jersey tomorrow morning. And I'm like, well, I just got off of work, and I don't think I can get there tomorrow morning, but I can be there Sunday. And I called a friend of mine because he's in the Navy, and he was actually the manager of the emergency room that I worked at. And I called him and I said, hey, I was supposed to work for you tomorrow, but I just got a call about deploying. And I said, are you going to deploy? And he goes, no, I don't think so. I gave my spot away to somebody who hasn't. And I'm like, okay. Well, then Sunday morning, I'm at the airport. And I'm like, did you come to say goodbye to me? I'm like, wow, that's really nice. He goes, no, I'm going with you. They called me too.
Surprise!
You know, we ended up 2 days later at McGuire, where they did all of our in-processing.
Oh, yeah. So they had to kind of just check off who's there, you know, and say, hey, here we are. And then from there, they're giving you an assignment from McGuire, like where you're going to be.
Much telling us, you know, as much as they can. They weren't really good with a lot of the information, but pretty much, you know, it was kind of like Escape from New York or Escape from Los Angeles. You know, we were getting there by buses, and we were going to go to the Javits, and then they were going to divide us up and put us in hotels. It was really bizarre. You know, of course, we in-processed everything at McGuire, and McGuire knew me because I was the IMA at the 87th there for literally that long.
For 3 seconds. Yeah, it was a short amount of time. So for our audience, when you hear like IMA, that's individual military augmentee, right? Is it military or medical? It's military augmentee.
Yeah.
And so essentially what they do is if they train with an active duty unit, and if the active duty unit gets tasked to deploy, in theory, trust me, it's theory, the IMA is supposed to be the backfill to whatever position she's attached to, whether it's a commander position or, you know, whatever, deputy position, whatever that is. They come in to the garrison side and they fill that position while that active duty base forward deploys.
For enlisted people, it's holding down the fort.
Yeah.
There we go. Layman's terms.
Thanks, MZ.
I got you.
She's like, let me
pretty much.
simplify. We don't use so many words. So
Let's
bad.
break it down Barney
And
style, guys.
yeah, and the IMA person that I was attached to, her family lived in Virginia, and she was the chief nurse at the 87th. So she's active duty. You know, they cover the med group for McGuire, which is a ginormous base.
Yeah.
And so for her plan was she's going home in April. So she wanted me trained in February, and she wanted me there the month of April. So when she found out I was tasked, she lost her mind, lost her ever loving mind. And it was strange, the interaction that we had.
Yeah, like what
So
do you
when I-
expect though? I mean, a national crisis just happened, and like you're not going to get your
Sorry, this isn't convenient for you.
Right. You know, and a lot of people, especially, and you know this, active duty a lot of them don't know how to deal with in these individual medical.
That's true, and it's not a dig on the active duty. It really, I had to learn too. I mean, when I was nurse manager at Lakenheath, well, before I was the nurse manager before me, she had an IMA, and she kind of taught me, and so did the deputy squadron commander, like what you do with them. Because I'm like, well, what is that? I mean, do they work the floor? Do they do? No, they literally have to learn your job. And if you do it right, and you sit down with what your skill set's supposed to be, and you're doing it, and you're giving them projects that are yours, and you have that good rapport, they're invaluable. But if you don't know what to do with them, like they just take up space, you know, and
Drink all your coffee.
I felt like that's it. Literally, they stuck me in a room, and I said, "I need to learn your job." She goes, "Sit here. When we have meetings, we'll come and get you."
oh,
And I said, "What time?" Literally, that's it. "What time do we leave?" She goes, "Well, when we leave, we'll let you know." So one day, you know me, I'm like working because I don't stop working, and I'm working, and then I realized, wait, it's 6:30.
nobody came and got me. Right.
I
So
went out there, and I'm like, "Where's everybody?" Right
they went, they're home eating dinner. Like, sorry.
I know. So I found a civilian, and I said, "So I'm looking for everybody." And they're like, "Well, who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm the IMA to the chief nurse." He's like, "They left at 3:30."
Aw.
3:30. Oh, jeez, Louise. How nice.
So after a week of that fun, I'm like, "Fuck you all. I will never be back here."
Right. See you later.
I'm gone.
Kiss my grits.
Kiss my grits.
So-
So, oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Woo,
Jinx.
Jinx.
We're over here playing rock, paper, scissors. So I'm imagining you landing in New York, you're getting in processed into McGuire. Kind of what's going through your head at that point. Are you trying to, you know, mentally prepare for what you're going to walk into? Are you scared? Are you nervous? Are you just kind of like cool, calm, and collected?
Yeah, I don't. You know, so Exorcist type movies scare me, but you know, going into that or going into, you know, military stuff doesn't scare me. You know, what could happen, worst case scenario in military, that doesn't scare me. But The Grudge scares me, and The Exorcist scares me. The
Paranormal.
Exorcist scares me. So those are the types that scare me. I was
We're
a little
opposites.
nervous, but I really wasn't. I was thinking more about, I hope we have toilet paper.
I hope we had to, but you're gonna tell people to set up, because I know some of this. I'm not kidding you. I was cleaning out my bathroom closet, and the phone rings, and I see it's her, and I'm like, oh, this can't be good. Like, it just can't be, because I know where she is, and I'm like, uh-oh. And so she calls, and she goes, you're not even gonna believe half this. So just kind of tell a couple of things, Angela, like the setup, like hotel room, what you were dealing with, training or lack thereof, what you were dealing with, what the setup, you know, just go through those different things.
So when we arrived initially, you know, of course, we're on the Javits floor, and we're trying to, you know, set up. There's, you know, we have some 06s there, but one 06 is more of a professor at a school. The other 06 is a researcher. There's, you know, some people there who've kind of been in leadership positions. I'm the only one who's been there who was there, who'd gone, who had experience as a chief nurse. And again,
Let me ask this question before you and further. The group of people that were there, was it a majority of Guard and Reserve? Was it active duty there also?
So our group the Air Force group was all reservists.
So I say this for the audience to understand. And when you're dealing with Guard and Reserve, they all get a day job.
Mm.
And so you do not know what you're going to get. It's a mixed bag of nuts, right? Like literally.
Right.
And I have had situations like I was working with a flight nurse. We're flying back to the States and the IV's going off and she comes over. She's like, can you handle that? And I'm like, you're a nurse. Can you handle that? She's like, yeah, I do plastics. Like, I don't do any of this stuff.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
okay, well, you just step away. Yeah. So that's what I was kind of trying to set the scene for people to understand this. Like,
Yeah, no, so, there was kind of somebody who kind of took, he's like, well, I'm an 06, I'll take the chief nurse role. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. And then I get this, so I leave because I'm not part of the leadership team. And then I get a knock on the door. Hey, we need you because you're the only one who's been a chief nurse and you know how to divide these nurses up. You know how to look at their skill sets and see what they need because nobody else does.
right.
Because our commander and our deputy commander were pilots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They weren't even medical.
They're just managing operations. Like, they're not managing details.
So you got a field promotion.
One of the 06s had been a chief nurse. He was strong. And I'm not sure why he didn't step up. The other 06, just that wasn't his thing. He was a researcher. Nice guy.
Yeah, wasn't his thing.
And when they told him to work on the floor, he panicked. He couldn't do it. I mean, I don't know why they sent him.
I can't. I has the dumb.
And he didn't have the skills. So we became, Tweedledee and Tweedledeer.
Well, and this is where were you guys placed? Let me ask that question. Where were you placed for you?
I can't remember where we were placed initially, but when the second wave came in, they said, we need leadership at the new hotel, so we need you to move. Okay, fine. So they put us in the Moxie, and I refer to the Moxie as the date rape hotel.
Ooh. Are there burn marks on the side tables?
Oh.
White powder on the floor?
It was bizarre.
Used condoms in the closet.
It was a hookup hotel. It was a nice hotel. It was, expensive. It wasn't cheap. There's a very popular actor who, at the time when we went there, of course, we looked it up. He was going through sexual assault charges because of something that happened there. It was bizarre. It was so bizarre that one day we had a group of Army generals who had heard about the hotel who came to look at it because they were concerned. There were topiary in the shape of bears that were in sexual positions. And then on the roof, these windows, and on the outside of the window, they had topiary. They're plastic, but it's still giant. I mean, giant topiaries of bears in sexual positions.
Oh.
And then on the top floor, or I guess it would be the penthouse, there was a little tiny putt-putt golf, and it was sex kittens. Like Pink Panther size.
Wow.
And they were sex kittens.
Oh, my. Interesting.
And then one of their walls had this beautiful, it was so pretty. It was like ivy and flowers, and then this pretty pink sign. It was those, the gaslit letters.
Yeah.
That said, under the influence.
Oh, wow. So that's super awesome. And then all the military staying in there, right?
This is a classy establishment. I had to pull it up.
Oh, you did?
Small but smart bedrooms and vibrant social spaces with bold programming to plug and play.
Oh.
Yikes.
Were you plugging and playing there?
No, I did a lot of sleeping. It's bizarre. Like our room, there everything is so small. I mean, it was really small. And to be stuck in, what the worst part is most of the rooms were very small. The beds were probably as large as the room, and you'd have enough room to just walk, like between you, the bed and the wall was just enough room for you to walk through.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like deployment. I mean, like how much room do you need to go sleep, right? You probably were all crashing most of the time.
Right.
What?
But if you're stuck in that room for 2 weeks and you can't come out because you've been put in quarantine.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's like, what did you have laundry and food? Like, what'd you do for laundry and food? Because I remember you telling me some stories.
We had to find laundry. They allowed some of the Chinese laundromats to stay open, so you could take your laundry there. You could either do it or they do it for you. And that's weird how they chose what could close and what could stay open.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of restaurants, fast food restaurants, stayed open, so you could order something, go there. You couldn't stay there and eat.
Right.
Central Park was open. It was packed. So you could go down there, you could run around, but in the city itself, there wasn't a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, they're all holed up in their house. What so you were saying, like, when you got there, I was listening and it was like people were picking like their leadership roles and stuff, but what the other nurses, who were the nurses that were getting brought in to go actually assist? Because I mean, no offense, but a lot of chiefs and no Indian ain't gonna make for anything happening, and you know that.
Right, and it was amazing people who got brought in. A lot of clinical nurses. We had the RTs, absolutely freaking amazing.
Respiratory therapists, yeah.
I think there are 4-H's.
The rock stars of COVID.
Respiratory therapists,
Mm-hmm.
amazing. There's one in particular who actually did a lot of teaching of residents at Queens.
Oh,
And it was because of him they implemented their rotating. I forget what it is called. Proning. The proning that they did.
right.
Teaching the residents, because the residents kept setting the ventilators at what they would for somebody who they need to ventilate, not somebody with COVID. And those specifications,
Putting them in ARDS.
changed
Mm-hmm.
significantly. And I remember this one case. There was a resident, and I want to say she was from, what's the country between Pakistan and India? Kashmir. She was from Kashmir, super smart, and she kept changing the vent settings. And he finally found, he's like, "Why are you changing my vent settings?" And she goes, "Well, XYZ." And he's like, "That's for a normal vented patient, someone who doesn't have COVID." And so after that, she goes around and she starts teaching all these other residents what he needed them to be doing. So,
Oh, nice.
Tech Sergeant Rudd, RUDD, absolutely amazing.
Tech Sergeant
Best
Rudd,
person.
shout out. We're giving you a shout out.
Him and I think he's either Tech or Master. Master Sergeant Brunel. No, it's Tech Sergeant Brunel. Those two RTs were amazing. Team players. They jumped on everything. They were helpful. They were mentors to anyone and everyone. They were just nice, kind people.
We love
Hell
RTs.
yeah, NCOs.
I love RTs. When in the hospital, I'll be like, okay. They say vent. I say, where are they?
Yeah.
Pain in managing that.
Because, I'm not the nurse that's going to run events. And even in our ERs, they teach us. And I'm like, where's RT?
We had to do it like, I mean, when I worked labor and delivery, we had to know the baby birds and we had to run, and I hated it every freaking time. I'm like, are we transferring? Where are we transferring?
Yeah,
Where's the
right?
RT? Yeah, I hated that stuff. But we did it because we had to. All right, so everybody's in there and you've got reservists. So it's all like, and mixed in with the civilians. And I know that the medical audience already knows this, but for the civilian audience, a nurse is not just a nurse, is just a nurse, just a nurse. It doesn't work that way. So if somebody worked a med surge floor, these were people that were getting furloughed because they didn't have the experience in ventilator, ICU, critical care, ER. Those were the hot specialties, right? So like OB units were shrinking, med surg units were turning into COVID units, and there were people that did not have jobs. No dig on them because they're probably rock stars in their own worlds, but they didn't have the specialty.
One hospital in particular, Jacoby, it's a huge hospital. If you look it up, it's a huge trauma, pediatric, like their PICU was 41 beds.
Wow.
Pediatric intensive care. I've never even seen a pediatric intensive care unit. And then to have one with 41 beds,
It's big.
it closed. And it became adult COVID.
Yeah, I'm telling you, a lot of people don't really realize that the staff that was working were working beyond reasonable, obviously extreme levels, and then it was like black or white. It was all or none. So they're either busting their ass doing these crazy shifts, or they're not working, right? People working in clinics, they weren't working anymore, So that you really basically took, I don't know, I'm going to take a total whack, 25% of your nursing population, and now you're overworking them, right? Or your medical community too, you know?
Well, so Queens Hospital lost 80% of their nurses.
There you go.
They
That was a
they
good
either
wag.
quit or they got sick and they passed away. They lost a huge. I mean, Queens has a huge immigrant population of nurses.
Yeah.
I mean, that hospital it's the demographics of New York and some of these areas are so tight. They lost a large swath of Filipino nurses who got sick and died. Or people who had sick family members. You don't want to work there if you have someone with cancer, so they took medical leave.
How long were you there for?
I stayed for like 3.5 months.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember what happened when you were in the ER. I remember you calling me. You were in the ER at that point, and you're like, "Hey, you are not gonna this is
Yeah,
crazy."
you know, of course, all the hospitals there they work differently than they do in Texas or in the parts of the country that aren't as old as New York.
Yeah,
So the hospitals most of them are old. They don't have, you know, you don't get your own individual private room every time you go into the emergency room. They had curtains that divided up all the stretchers. So all the curtains were removed, and it's just like a giant ward.
I remember
Bay
you.
style.
Yeah, I remember her telling me, and I don't remember this, but you said I don't remember how many it hold, like 70 came to mind. You're like, I think it holds, and I'm making up a number, I could be off, but it was like 70 people can fit there. That's like your max for patients. And she's like, there's over 100. And
so they have an 80-bed ER.
That was close.
60 patients in there.
Okay, and then what did you say? Hold on, I'll let you say it in a minute. What did you tell me? You told me two things. You said there's an ice box here. It's an 18-wheeler ice box.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, there was always one in the bay, right?
Yeah.
And then you had told me when I remember you saying specifically, we have them 3 deep. And if somebody is 3 deep in there, we can't get to them. Like, we can't get to them.
Yeah.
That's it.
There were some of them we couldn't get to them because there's 2 or 3 structures in front of them. There was one wall, it's a head wall, and it would have, you know, a whole setup. You have your oxygen and your suction and your air, and it was for 5 people. And there's 11 people on that wall.
Got splitters everywhere.
Yeah, and one of the RTs go, I think that person has died, but we couldn't get to them to turn the vent off.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's insanity.
Yeah, they started pulling in recliners. So they also had recliners, you know, for their walkie-talkies.
Right.
And there was a patient who had passed away and nobody noticed. She passed away in a recliner. And it's not that people weren't paying attention, and it's not that nobody cared. It's that they couldn't do anything about it.
The
They
volume.
walked in and they died.
Yeah. And like you said, people didn't know, like the proning didn't come around immediately, right? You know, people didn't know.
It didn't. No. And you know, in all honesty and in all fairness, when we showed up there, we showed up 4 weeks too late.
Yeah.
New York was on fire and halfway burnt down when we showed up there. You know, they really do make it go, oh gosh, thanks for the military, you all saved us. No, those nurses who stuck it out, who were there, those are the heroes. And I don't use that loosely because it irritates me when people go, oh, you're a hero.
Yeah.
Because I think it should only be used for specific incidents and for specific people and for specific professions. In general, nurses are not heroes. That's the job that you chose. Do your fucking job. You're not a hero. Thank you for being a nurse. Thank you for doing dialysis that I don't want to do. Thank you for being an ICU nurse that I don't want to do. But you're not a hero.
This is how
That's your job.
This is how
you chose to do it.
This is how I felt about award packages. I only wrote 2. Yours was one of them. But I had the same sentiment. Like, yay, you came in and went to work. Bravo. Like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, you came in, you did the job to help these guys out, but the ones that were there sticking it out, the mass number of them that passed away trying to do this job, not knowing what they were up against.
They didn't have all the information at that point.
Right.
This was still very early on where We
Yeah,
didn't have a firm understanding of what this thing was, how it traveled,
exactly.
what was going to happen, resources,
Right. All of that. So
and fuck all this. What is it, safe patient ratios out the window.
it's just
Well, no,
just
when
patient ratios.
Yeah.
when I wonder something, what can I do to help you? She goes, anything. I have 20 patients. And I said, well, 20 patients among all of you? She goes, no, those 20 patients over there, those are all mine.
All COVID too.
Yes, all COVID.
Yeah, that's super awesome.
And I was like, you can't, I mean, we all know nobody can do 20 patients. You
How
just can't even.
I don't know, med surg nurses would be like, hold my beer.
Yeah, the med surg nurses, you know what? I bow to the med surg nurses.
That's right.
I don't want to do that job. How they can pass, think 200 medications on one shift.
Dude, they're professional drug dealers. They're like I went up and had to backfill a shift up there and because I had mean nurses on my floor that were like, you're the new person, we're not doing it. And they set me up and I was like, fuck all of you. So I went up and I walked in the door in all my glory in the the shift change. And the first words out of my mouth wasn't even hello. I'm like, just so y'all know, I'm not taking a team. I didn't win friends, but there was one nurse there that got it. She goes, you come work with me. And she was amazing. And so she goes, that'd be like me going downstairs and I was working labor and delivery. I'm like, yeah, like throwing you in there and say like, here's my preterm, preeclamptic, whatever.
Good luck.
Have fun. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
And she does this with her hands. I got my glove on.
Right. Here's my glove. Like, do you know your measurements? Like, yeah. Do you know how to run mag, pit, insulin? So it was the same idea. I had mad respect for med surg nurses up and down. All my kudos. There you go. Well, let me ask, when you guys were there, you were side by side with the civilians, right? You're working with them. You had the advantage. I guess maybe a lot of reservists have the advantage of already working in the civilian sector. So I would think my assumption would be that you didn't find it over like a huge transition, whereas like active duty nurses and medical people would have been like a drastic change for them.
Yeah, no, I think the nurses did well. There was some animosity. There was some frictions at times between, our nurses and the civilian nurses, in that, it's kind of like a traveler. You know how the traveler.
Oh yes, they always give them the worst assignments, and yeah.
Yeah, and there were several times where I went up and I'm like, why do you have 8 patients? And they'd have 2 or 3 civilians who had like 2 or 3. So they were overloading some of the military nurses. They were taking advantage of it.
Kind of in the assumption you're temporary, so we can just burn you, kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of. And it was like they were, for the most part, they were treated well, but there was those few occasions where we were just like, this just doesn't make sense. And you don't want to go in there and rub things and, make people mad. But I will say, for the most part, if we took concerns to the CNO, or the chief nursing officer, they were very helpful. They were, nice about it. And we're like, look, we don't want to make waves. We're military. We're used to suck, and we'll suck it up.
Right.
We will embrace the suck.
Yeah. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant that we have nurses that are pain clinic nurses working on the floor with ventilators. We have aesthetic nurses on the floor working with ventilators. So, and then you have, travelers and your civilian nurses who aren't necessarily taking the same amount of load. Now, that was not the norm.
Right.
But it did happen, and we did have to address it.
What was the so 3.5 months, that's a long time burning the hours. So like a couple of things, like what did the hours look like, and what were you watching as time went on, the mental health of everybody, civilians and military? Were you seeing a difference, or?
I would imagine the morale kind of tanking.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly. Of course, most of our deployments are volunteer. You have the ones that aren't.
Well, that's reserve and guard. Active duty right now is swearing at you. They're like, fuck you. We're just going.
Yeah. So we had, right? What do you mean? We didn't ask?
What do you mean there's a choice? Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was, again, too, that was also all over the place. We had one or two that they didn't want to go. They didn't volunteer, but they were selected because maybe they are an ICU nurse, or maybe they are CCAT, or,
Yeah.
they do that trauma. They were selected, a lot were selected for their specialty, but
Mhm.
most of them volunteered. But the problem was, and I've said this before, and I feel bad. There's always one bad apple, and
Mhm.
they screw it up for everybody else. So, you know, so many nurses now are going for advanced degrees, and they're becoming a nurse, and then they immediately go get their NP,
Mhm.
because they don't want to work bedside anymore. And I don't blame them, but I'm a bedside nurse. I'm master's prepared. That's the road that I chose, and now I'm in leadership, and that's what I enjoy doing. But we have nurses that came in and who said, "Well, I'm an NP. I'm going to be a provider," and I'm like, "You're in a clinical nurse spot. You chose your job, and your job is a bedside nurse in the military." And so we had some nurses who, not many, maybe one or two, who really pushed back, who really created a lot of problems, because you have the other NPs that are like, "What do you mean to do? Tell me where to go. What, Foley? Okay, I got it."
Right. Just jumping in. Well, and again, for our
Yeah.
audience and civilian side, what they may not really understand is that if nurse practitioner is the easiest one to choose as an example, but if you are a nurse practitioner in the civilian sector and you come to the military, you have to be picked up in a nurse practitioner slot to be able to practice as a nurse practitioner. If you get picked up as a 46N, which is just a general nurse, and you are functioning in a military capacity, you don't get to work as a nurse practitioner. You get to work as a nurse, right? Much like we see the east side. I've met nurses, I've met ICU nurses that are technicians in the military for, maybe they came in as enlisted and then they went and got their nursing degree, but they didn't change their slot. They're just like, I'm fine where I'm at. And so they're nurse, civilian, and technician in the military, which I personally don't know how they do that because I would just overstep my boundaries and get in trouble all the time. But that's people need to understand that we have to be, and the doctors are the same way. You can be a cardiologist in your civilian world, but if you're walking in the door and you're trained as a flight surgeon, that's what you're doing. You're not doing cardiology.
You've got
right?
to stay within your scope.
You have to stay within that scope that the military is picking you up at. So there's
Yeah.
my little soapbox.
No matter how educated you may be, you've got to stick within your lane.
Right. It's a sticking lane. So a lot of people don't really realize that the reserves that in guard, that duality does exist.
Yeah.
So they were, sounds like everything was going along. I'm not going to say swimmingly because I heard some of those stories, but they were moving and you guys were being effective.
Yeah.
How was, because at that time I remember seeing the news where like people were hanging out of their apartment windows cheering medical. Like, did you experience any of that or?
I did a few times. And it was bizarre because even if you couldn't see them, you could hear it because everything echoes there. And you could hear it. It was literally pots and pans, and they were either beating two pots together or they had a spoon and they're beating a pot. And they were thanking people for doing what they were doing. You were in New York City. Literally, the world was on fire there.
Yeah.
It was nice to have that appreciation.
I'm sure that at least some level buffered the mental health toll. Like, were you watching it decline over the months on the military side, civilian side, both?
I didn't really pay attention to the civilian side. I did a little bit in that the communities, and I will say, just because I seem to have been in the hospitals that I went, it seemed to be Filipino heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and that community's tight. Like, if they don't kill you, then you're in with them.
Well, you're still alive. That's good.
I know, right? They were emotionally drained, and it was heartbreaking to see them mourn for their colleagues. Now I'm going to cry. Just mourn for their colleagues, and lose as many nurses as they lost. People that were educators.
Yeah.
They were bedside nurses. They taught bedside nursing. That's not what they wanted to do. And yet they weren't safe in their scope or in their realm. And to see them pull together and to see the nurses who really stuck it out, I admire them.
Yeah. What were the What the military nurses and or the medical staff in general. I mean, I say nurses, I think I just mean it collectively, the healthcare workers. What were you watching on the military side?
On the military side, it was different. Everyone I talked to when we went there, we'd been there a couple of weeks, and finally people started going, "Holy crap!" Afghanistan prepared me for this.
Yeah,
What they were saying,
yeah,
because while you saw, dead bodies, or you saw, the battles, or you heard the battles or the explosions, and if you were there, then you were experienced at being bombed.
yeah,
Um, and they were prepared. They're like, okay, we can do this. But the people that hadn't, the people that they were feeding into the panic frenzy, and the media, shame on them. The panic that they caused. Well, people need to know the panic that they caused. And of course, I'm gonna have to be really careful. They politicized a lot of it.
yeah,
The panic that the media caused is and was unforgivable. Now, I'll be honest, I thought that the media was blowing over, what's the word? Exaggerating what they were saying.
yeah.
There's
Sensationalizing it.
trucks, there's rooms of dead bodies. When I got there, I realized that the media really had no clue what was going on. It was worse than what they were saying. And thank God they had no clue what was really going on, because if they did, the panic that would have, we saw panic, but the panic, the level of panic that we would have seen would have been insane.
I
Yeah.
was so curious about that because I remember being home on this side of the fence and seeing all the footage, of just tarps after tarps after tarps and parking lots and just awful scenes, and thinking, oh my God, like we all knew this was a big deal, but to that extent, and having this little part of me hoping that they were just embellishing and making this out to be worse than it actually was. So it's interesting to hear the perspective from somebody who actually had boots on the ground and was in the hospital.
Well, and I think that's when I called. I'm like, this is worse than what anybody knows. And unless you were there, you really can't put it into perspective. So when I came back to work, I felt like a jerk, because listening to them moan and groan about how hard it was and how many patients they have, I'm like, don't want to hear it, because you have no clue. But then I had to put it back into perspective. What they know is the worst thing they've ever seen.
Right. They had no clue. Well, which goes back to your like the people that were more resilient in New York that were saying, "Hey, Afghanistan prepared me for this." And really, I mean, if you put it on just a timeline, it's half of a deployment, right?
Yeah.
3.5 months instead of like the 6 months. Now, the
Right.
acuity was through the roof and probably even worse than a deployment on a consistent basis. You know what I mean? That high level, but it is half, and we are used to embracing the suck, and we just have to do it, and that's the end of it.
And not just that, but they had that ongoing, lingering fear of, well, what happens if I get sick?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that what do we worry about in deployment is like, I don't want to get bombed or
Yeah, I
shot
don't wanna
or
get shot.
sniped or something, and there it's like, I don't want to catch the invisible
Yeah.
cootie that's gonna put me down. So
At least when you're shot, you know it
yeah,
pretty quickly.
yeah, I think
Right.
some people have probably been happier to risk getting shot over getting that,
Hell yeah.
Stupid shit like COVID toes. And, is it a thing? Is it not a thing? But, we began to joke that, be careful. Don't say that you jammed your foot and your toe hurts, because you were getting put in quarantine for the most ridiculous things. And 2 solid weeks. I mean, we had people that started losing their minds, and I was like, get away from my door, not me. But, we'd send a chaplain to talk to them through their door.
Yeah.
We weren't compassionate with these people. There's no reason that, if you're going to quarantine, and again, too, I understand it. It was like the know you don't know.
Yeah.
But locking people in and isolating them in their room just made things worse, especially on the military side, because they literally, I remember the day after somebody arrived. It was in the second wave. They came and they said, "Ma'am, I have a sore throat. It's kind of scratchy." That person got stuck in quarantine for 2 weeks. And it
Immediately.
was negative.
Yeah.
Negative. There's
Jeez.
3 negative COVID tests.
I remember my daughter when she got COVID, she day one, right? That night sore, bellyache and fever. And at the time, it's different variants present different ways. And so at that time I knew, I was like, ah, dang, I'm pretty sure. Brought her in, tested her. Yep, you have COVID. Threw her in her room for 10 days. And sadly, after the first day, she was actually 100%. The kids were like resilient. But for 10 days, and I will tell you, by the time we hit I don't even know if we made it halfway, maybe 5 or 6. I'm like hugging her at the door. And my husband's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't care. She needs human touch.
Yes.
I cannot do that. She needs her
Yeah.
mom. Like, screw that." And he's like, "Hello, wake up. Like, this could be worse." Because again, we didn't. No, I'm like, "She's presenting fine. I'm hugging her. Go away."
Yeah.
I was kind of getting squirrely myself, that my poor kid's in there. And so I can't imagine somebody that's in a place that nobody's really chaplain here and there and whatnot. When
Yeah.
you came back, so 3.5 months go by and you come back, you guys all came back together, right? Were they removing you out slowly?
No, we were staggered out. I was one
That's
of the
good.
last ones to leave. First one in, last one out.
That's you.
But I had to make sure that everybody else got home first, and then I
Right.
left.
So when you got home, either were you getting word on like how people were handling post quote unquote New York deployment,
Um,
and what was
yeah,
going
I
on with
was.
you?
So I became the touch point for probably 90% of the people that were there. Not necessarily the 06s, because they went back to their jobs and they were kind of like, you're an 05, I don't need your help. But people were coming back and they weren't getting the leave that they needed, or they were, some bases are putting them in 2 weeks of quarantine and some bases weren't. And some bases let them go home to do their quarantine. And so, one group came back and they came back negative, and then somebody in their office was sick, so they're in processing. And then 2 days after they get back, they're told that when they in processed, one of the people that was in processing them was sick, but was at work and had COVID, and now they were all exposed to COVID.
Oh, lovely.
And so it was, and they weren't getting the MedCon that they needed. And so people are calling me like I have some direct line to the Pentagon and the DOD, and I'm like,
Well, that was
so here I am.
that was our office.
Right. And so here I am trying to find, their wing commander's number to say, "I'm just a chief nurse and I'm trying to help your people and they're not getting help." And I will say that the response that I got was super, and not anybody reached out and goes, "Why are you doing this? You're out of your lane." Because it was all done out of, caring about them and caring about the troops and making sure they got what they needed.
Yeah.
I was lucky because at the time I was still in IMA, even though I had already said I'm not doing that again. But I fell into the category. And so Afric, we had an amazing colonel. She was so nice. I wish I remembered her name. I have to go back and look at my decoration. But they literally did everything for us. They completed our travel vouchers for us. They made sure that we got our decorations and our ribbons. They made sure we got paid. But yet other people are like, "Ma'am, it's 3 months and they haven't processed my voucher and they're saying this and that." And I felt, that's just wrong.
Wrong, but it ended up being like what you experienced was the exception in my mind. Like all that delay stuff was normal.
Yeah, and they even told us, they're like, "Please don't tell everybody how well you're being treated," because we knew it. And we made sure to let thank you so much. But she was amazing. There's like 15 of us that were IMAs, and so she really did take care of us. We were lucky. And I want to sit there and say, good leaders take care of their people, but we all know, sometimes finance is a problem, and
Well, they do their best. They put their people first, but yeah, they're going to encounter some roadblocks.
Right.
Did you feel like your mental health was challenged when you came back, or you were?
No, not at all.
Really?
Not at all.
Well,
my mental health was challenged in Qatar.
That's
That's
a
all
whole.
I'll say about
I
that.
know why that. That's a whole other podcast, but yeah.
Yeah, that's another story.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, like I was thinking back to what you were saying with the Filipino community and the civilian community in general. They lost so many people. So you guys weren't experiencing that, right? Your people were not dropping and so I wonder if that's where some of the PTSD came in and that stress, like the hell, Fred was here and then tomorrow he's not,
You know, we didn't have one military member get sick. Not one Air Force member got sick with COVID while we were there.
It's
Wow.
because we're shot up with so many preservatives when we come in. We're like McDonald's hamburger. You just set us out there and we're not going to mold.
COVID comes in and it's like, how do you live like this? Damn, bitch.
COVID was like, I'm out of here. This place is fucked up.
Yeah, we will outlive everybody. If you look at the veterans who are still alive and they're like 101,
Right.
102, it's of all the freaking vaccines they
Like
received.
And alcohol.
Cockroaches.
And
Yeah.
alcohol.
Preserved.
alcohol.
I
Finally.
think there needs to be a research on vaccines, alcohol, and caffeine as a preservatives
I
for
will
longevity.
volunteer myself as tribute.
there
Come-
might be something to this.
That's
Researchers,
hilarious.
you can find me
right here.
right here. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that I don't know. Do you have any other questions? I'm just sitting here kind of processing all of this.
No more questions, but I think it would be important for us just to take a minute to say, we've laughed, we've talked through this, but what happened was absolutely awful.
Yeah.
And unprecedented challenges that our people who trained us never had to deal with. And we did the best that we could with what we had on all levels. I can only imagine what that was like for you, Ange, having boots on the ground in New York at that time. A lot of Americans and people worldwide lost their lives. So just part of this wanted to take a minute to honor those who did pass and all of those who did the very best that they could to try and preserve that human life.
Yeah.
That doesn't go without notice.
I agree. Definitely needed to be honored. Good call, MC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. The people that continue to work, and not that the people who didn't are bad. They had to stop for whatever reason, and they had to do what was right for them.
Yeah.
And I know every now and then you'll hear, well, you didn't do well. Not everybody could because you have sick family, whatever, for whatever reason.
Well, there's a lot of things that people didn't know. Like I was in the middle of going out a door, and we were at the end of waiting to receive. Like, are we going to receive these guys? Did they get sick? Who's getting sick? How are we handling it? And there was a lot of back and forth on that. But, it's like I said, it's like a whole other podcast, but it was state funded versus federal funded. Is the
Yeah,
military going to
that
cover
mess.
them or not? And I know that was a huge mess. So people were handling other things at other times. The people that were in the Corps, highest respect. I mean, you guys being there, getting it done. And you're right. For those that were not, it was hard for me. Part of me was like, man, I don't want to be called, but kind of if they did, I wouldn't say no. Like I would. Because why? Because we're trained for this shit, right? We're all just a little one off.
Because, yeah, we're trained for this.
Yeah, we're like, let's go. I mean, you remember, I've said this on other podcasts. I had somebody call me. She was a MSc, so she was like a health administrator in the military, but she was health administrator civilian world. And do you remember, Ange, when they were getting to the point now where these hospitals they were worried about experiencing the surges. This is post New York now, but other hospitals were getting ready to experience surges and they were predicting them. And they're talking to the staff and they're like, we're going to have to change our triage practice, like Mass Cal. And she had called me and she was like, our docs don't want to do it. Like, and she was military, so she knew, like, we're all trained in Mass Cal. Like, we flip who gets what for services when it's a Mass Cal, right? And they were like, yeah, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. And like, you're going to have to preserve the most life. You're going to have to,
Right.
Fortunately, I don't know personally how many hospitals did do that. I don't know if that ever got into play with them or not. But I just know that it was a huge stressor even at the thought of it. And yet that's how we're trained. When we go into a mass cal or we do any exercises, that's exactly how our mind flips because that's how we're trained. So kudos for everybody that was stepping up to the plate in any capacity. Whether that, being home with their loved ones, taking care of them, being right there at the bedside, taking care of them there, the ones that gave up their life. Yeah, we owe a lot to them. So, and as always, it's impressive. And, you definitely are, you were military before you were military. That's what I've decided. Like, you are already she was already proven when she walked in the door.
I was a Roman gladiator in my last
I
life.
think you were. I'm pretty sure you were. I bet you even have a toga at home somewhere.
Stepped onto the ward.
She cut-
Hold my beer.
Here I come.
Here I am.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Any last thoughts?
No, not at all.
Okay. MZ, any last thoughts?
For all those that lost their lives from the COVID-19 pandemic, we remember you. We love you. Thank you to our nurses and healthcare professionals for doing what you did.
I think all the sentiment was said. So, all right, everybody, this is Bullets to Bedpans, and you got Detox and MZ here, and we are out for this episode. Peace out.
Peace.